Silence or stand. Please be seated.
In a few weeks, the Royal Commission will pass the halfway mark in our work. Our final report will be provided to Government by the end of 2017. There are many elements to our work and many issues we must resolve. As you all know, apart from the other tasks we have, a significant component of our work is undertaken in case studies for which we conduct public hearings. We have now held public hearings in every state and territory. Today we commence our 28th public hearing. This is the second public hearing in a regional centre. At this point, 10 case study reports have been tabled in Parliament and published on our website. A further 4 case study reports are nearing completion and will be provided to the Governor-General and the various governors in the near future. The rate of engagement with the Royal Commission remains consistent. Around 270 people make contact with us each week. In total, our call centre has received more than 21,000 calls. Nearly 11,000 people have written to or emailed us since we commenced our work. The Royal Commission has the power to refer matters that come to us to other relevant authorities, including the police, for investigation. To date, we have referred more than 600 matters to the police in the various states of Australia. The Commissioners have now completed more than 3,400 private sessions, and a further 1,400 people are waiting in a queue for their session. The rate of requests for a private session has not diminished, and from time to time, usually in response to particular public hearings, the demand increases. We have previously spoken of our research reports, which we have released. A large number of projects are currently underway. We recently published the report which is entitled Child Sexual Abuse Prevention Programs for Preschoolers, a synthesis of current evidence. In all, we have now published 10 substantial research reports. As you will be aware, the Royal Commission has the major task of considering redress for survivors. The report on that issue is presently being drafted. It will be detailed and comprehensive and will point the way for government, both the Commonwealth and the states and institutions, in meeting the needs of survivors. I anticipate that the report will be with the Governor-General and governors in August. The need for a fair and effective redress scheme has not been doubted by any government or the institutions that we have consulted. Fairness and effectiveness will be central to our redress report. I turn to talk briefly about this hearing. The hearing concerns the response of various institutions, each a part of the Catholic Church, to allegations of child sexual abuse. Although we are conscious that child abuse issues in the Ballarat region extend beyond the Catholic Church, it was necessary, having regard to our resources, to define a case study which ensures the most effective use of those resources. It must also be remembered that we are constrained by our terms of reference and cannot conduct a hearing which may prejudice prospective criminal proceedings. For this reason, we cannot presently look at the Ballarat orphanage in a public hearing. Early in the life of the Royal Commission, I conducted some private sessions in Ballarat. Other commissioners have also conducted a number of private sessions in this city. In addition to the private sessions, I have met with many local people and spoken at community meetings about the issue of child sexual abuse. In my various discussions, I was told of the significant scale of the abuse which has occurred in the Ballarat region and of the great suffering of many people. That suffering extends beyond the individual survivor. Many members of their families and friends have been deeply affected by what has occurred. The impacts have been felt throughout the community. I am conscious of the work that was done by the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry into the handling of child abuse by religious and other non-government organisations in the Ballarat region. In undertaking our work in Ballarat, it will be necessary to retrace some of the ground which that inquiry traversed. However, Councillor Sisting will, in her opening, draw upon the investigative work that the Royal Commission has been able to do. The evidence in this public hearing will extend significantly beyond the evidence which was available to the parliamentary inquiry. Because of the nature of the issues which have emerged in the Ballarat region, we have decided to conduct this hearing in two parts. Ms Finesse will outline the evidence which she proposes to lead in the first stage of the inquiry. The second stage is likely to occur towards the end of this year. The evidence in the first stage of this hearing will include the personal stories of a number of survivors. That evidence will describe the gross violations of individuals by ordained members of the Catholic Church. As you are aware, the Royal Commission has revealed many shocking stories of the betrayal of children. As we listen to the evidence in this hearing, we should all reflect on the impact for those who have suffered in the Ballarat region and the thousands of others who have suffered throughout Australia. In this hearing, there will be evidence from perpetrators. The evidence will not be directly concerned with the circumstances of their offences. That has already been dealt with by the courts. However, the evidence has an important part to play in the Royal Commission coming to understand both why ordained members of the Catholic Church became abusers and how the Church responded to allegations of their abuse. It will be particularly important in helping the community to learn that the knowledge that people in authority in the Church had of the abuse and will assist us to assess the response of those in charge. I appreciate that the evidence of perpetrators may be confronting for some people, in particular for survivors. However, without the evidence of perpetrators, the true story of the response of the Church in Ballarat may never be completely revealed. Mindful of the possible impact of the hearing, the Commission staff have been careful to organise, in cooperation with local services, support for any person who may need it during the hearing. From my discussions and those of Commission staff with members of the community, I am aware that there may be different and strongly held views about the conduct of ordained people and the appropriateness of the response of leaders of the Church in the Ballarat diocese. Many people want this public hearing. There are others who doubt the need for a public hearing. Some may not want the story told. Unless the truth is revealed and known publicly, the prospect of effective healing for survivors and institutions is diminished. When he recently visited Sri Lanka, Pope Francis said of the suffering brought by civil war in that country, the process of healing also needs to include the pursuit of truth, not for the sake of opening old wounds, but rather as a necessary means of promoting justice, healing and unity. The Pope's words have relevance to the task we are about to undertake in this hearing. Yes, Ms Finnis.
Your Honour, I appear to assist the Royal Commission, assisted by Ms Amundsen and Ms Hagar.
Yes, are there any other appearances?
The Commission, please. I appear for 2 victims given the pseudonyms BAA.
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you make sure that you come to that microphone?
I appear for 2 victims given the pseudonyms BAA and BAB for Timothy Green, Peter Blenkiron, all of whom were granted leave for representation on the 13th of May, and for a victim given the pseudonym BAS, granted leave for representation on the 14th of May.
Thank you, Dr Hanscom. Yes, other appearances?
My name is Maloney. I appear for Mr Stephen Woods and Mr Andrew Collins.
Yes, and you've been granted leave, I think, already.
We have been granted leave.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr Maloney.
Yes. Your Honours and Commissioners, my name is Seckle. I appear pursuant to leave granted on the 13th of May for BAP, for Robert Walsh and for Helen Margaret Watson. Additionally, I appear on behalf of Andrea Genevieve Lockhart. In respect of matters of BAP, Mr Walsh and Ms Lockhart, I'm instructed by Dr Waller Legal, and in respect of Mrs Watson, I'm instructed by Mr Graham Hills of Hines and Partners.
Thank you, Mr Seckle. Anyone else?
The Commission pleases. I appear for David Ridsdale, leave having been granted, and I also seek leave to appear for Gordon Hill.
Yes.
My name is Dr Martine Marrick.
Yes. Mr Hill, Ms Finnis?
Mr Hill is a witness who will be giving evidence with the other survivors.
Right. A survivor?
Yes, Your Honour. I have no objection to leave being granted, Your Honour.
Again, you appear for Mr Ridsdale.
I do.
David Ridsdale, Your Honour.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I understand. Yes, very well. You have leave.
Thank you, Your Honour.
May it please the Commission, I seek leave to appear for the Truth, Justice and Healing Council, for the Diocese of Ballarat, for the Christian Brothers and for the Sisters of Nazareth. I appear with Mr Woods, instructed by Gilbert and Tobin.
Thank you, Mr Gray.
Your Honours, Commissioner Kernaghan, I seek leave to appear for Francis Sheehan. Leave has previously been given for Mr Sheehan.
Yes, you have.
Kernaghan's my name.
Thank you, Mr Kernaghan. Anyone else? I'm not sure what is happening technically, but some of you are not that easy to hear. And I don't know, but I assume that the microphones are picking up everyone's voices so that they can be transmitted through the internet. But can we make sure that when you do stand to talk, that you gather a microphone so that we're certain that you can be heard? But we'll get a report in a little while as to whether or not it's effective. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honour. As Your Honour has indicated, this is the 28th case study, the subject of a public hearing by the Royal Commission. It is the first of 2 public hearings which will examine various institutions run by Catholic Church authorities in and around Ballarat, as well as the responses of those authorities to allegations of child sexual abuse and to convictions of a number of priests and religious for child sexual offences. This public hearing is primarily concerned with the impact of child sexual abuse on a number of survivors who were abused by Catholic clergy and religious in the following institutions: St Joseph's Home in Ballarat, a children's home administered by the Sisters of Nazareth, a female Catholic religious order; St Alipius, a primary school within the Diocese of Ballarat, staffed by the Christian Brothers; St Alipius Parish, which is in Ballarat East; St Patrick's College, a secondary school run by the Christian Brothers in Ballarat; and St Patrick's Christian Brothers Boys Primary School in Ballarat. The impact of the abuse of children in these institutions on the community of Ballarat will also be a focus of inquiry. The Royal Commission will examine the response of the Diocese of Ballarat and the Christian Brothers to survivors of child sexual abuse, their families and the community of Ballarat. As Your Honour has indicated, the terms of reference of the Royal Commission include a requirement that it ensure that evidence that may be received by it and that identifies particular individuals as having been involved in child sexual abuse or related matters is dealt with in a way that does not prejudice current or future criminal proceedings. It is for this reason that this public hearing will not be inquiring into allegations of abuse at the Ballarat orphanage. Has indicated this public hearing will hear evidence from Gerald Francis Ridsdale, a former priest of the Diocese of Ballarat who was incarcerated following convictions for indecent assault, gross indecency and buggery of children in Victoria. His evidence will be given by video link. Paul David Ryan was ordained as a priest in the Diocese of Ballarat in 1976. Ryan has given evidence at a private hearing before the Royal Commission, and the transcript of that hearing will be tendered in due course. Ryan has been convicted of 3 charges of indecent assault against 1 victim in Victoria. I will say more about these offenders later. The Royal Commission's investigations into institutions run by the Catholic Church in and around Ballarat are not complete. The Royal Commission will return to Ballarat towards the end of the year for a second Ballarat case study. The Catholic Diocese of Ballarat is geographically extensive. It has 51 parishes that cover the western third of Victoria. It extends from the Murray River in the north to the Southern Ocean in the south. In the west, it is bound at the southern Australian border by the Archdiocese of Adelaide and the Diocese of Port Pirie. In the east, it is bound by the Diocese of Sandhurst and the Archdiocese of Melbourne. The geographic area of the diocese includes the city of Ballarat, which is located in the east of the diocese. James O'Collins was the bishop of the diocese between 1941 and 1971. Ronald Mulcairns was the coadjutor bishop from 1968 until 1971, when he became the Bishop of Ballarat. His vicars general were Father Frank Madden until 1976, Monsignor Leo Fiscalini until 1982, and Monsignor Henry Nolan until 1991. Father Brian Finnegan was in the position from 1991 until 1998. Bishop Mulcairns retired in 1997 and was replaced by Bishop Peter Connors, who held that position until August 2012. Bishop Paul Bird is the current Bishop of Ballarat. The College of Consultors is a group of priests who serve as an advisory body to the bishop in the pastoral care of the diocese. From at least the 1960s, a Diocesan Consultors Committee, which I'll refer to as the Consultors, over which the bishop presided, operated within the Diocese of Ballarat. Among other matters, the Consultors advised on the appointment and movement of priests in the diocese. Within the Ballarat diocese is the parish of Ballarat East, also known as the St Alipius parish, where the St Alipius Church, Presbytery and Parish School are located. The congregation of the Christian Brothers operated or provided teaching staff to schools within the geographic area of the diocese, including within the city of Ballarat. A Christian Brothers community was resident at St Patrick's College in Ballarat. St Alipius School was established in Ballarat East in the 1850s, and it's necessary to understand some history of that school. In 1881, the Sisters of Mercy took over the education of girls in the school. In 1888, the Christian Brothers established St Alypius Boys' School. The Royal Commission will hear evidence that in the 1970s, the girls' school was co-educational from prep until grade 2. Once boys completed grade 2, they would attend the boys' school. The boys' school was known formally as St Alypius Boys' School and is often referred to as St Alypius Primary School. Between 1971 and 1974, at St Alypius Boys' School, Brother Fitzgerald was the grade 3 teacher, Brother Dowland or Brother Farrell were the grade 5 teachers, Brother Best was the grade 6 teacher and headmaster. Gerald Ridsdale was the assistant priest and school chaplain in 1972 and 1973. Each of these brothers, with the exception of Brother Fitzgerald, who died in 1987, has been convicted of child sexual offences in relation to children who attended the school. As Your Honour has indicated, the Royal Commission has been working in the Ballarat community over the past 18 months. Royal Commissioners and Commission staff have met with community leaders, local police, health and support services, politicians and advocates, as well as survivors and their families. Community forums have been held, and in these meetings and fora, Ballarat community members have described wide-ranging impacts of systemic institutional child sexual assault, including significant social, health and mental issues for survivors, a large number of reported suicides and premature deaths, neglect and shunning of victims by their own families and the institutions in which they were abused, a loss of faith and connectedness to the Catholic Church communities, and a lack of community cohesion. In this case study, there will be evidence from the Centre Against Sexual Assault in Ballarat and Moving Towards Justice. The latter is an independent movement of lay people in the Diocese of Ballarat which seeks to support victims of sexual abuse and to promote healing within the Church. For the first time, the Royal Commission will hear evidence from a psychiatrist who has particular expertise in the assessment and management of trauma and abuse and the consequences of child and adult sexual abuse, including abuse by clergy and religious. Associate Conjoint Professor Carolyn Quadrio will give evidence about the literature attesting to the wide-ranging psychological and physical effects, both long-term and short-term, of child sexual abuse. She is expected to say that the post-traumatic stress is common in adult survivors of child sexual abuse, and she will describe the common physical symptoms in young children. Professor Quadrio will also give evidence about the spiritual effects of child sexual abuse on children and their family, and the ripple effects which may lead to ostracism of victims within their religious communities. She will also address the support needed for survivors. The Royal Commission will hear from 17 men, each of whom was abused as a child at a Catholic institution in Ballarat. Each is expected to speak about the impact of the abuse on their lives, from their schooling and work history through to their relationships with their children. The impact on their parents and siblings and the effect on their faith will also be the subject of evidence. One witness is expected to say that his siblings have told him that they despise the Church and have lost their faith after being heavily involved in the Church for 3 generations. The Royal Commission will hear that the impact of child sexual abuse is ongoing. Many witnesses are expected to say that they continue to suffer from mental health issues and that they have attempted suicide as a result of the abuse experienced as children. Some common themes are expected to arise from their evidence. including feelings of guilt and humiliation, a feeling of underachievement or loss of potential, struggles with substance abuse, disruptive behaviour, distrust, withdrawal, learning difficulties, and problems in employment and financial matters. The Royal Commission is also expected to hear evidence from 10 witnesses that they were sexually abused at St Alypius Boys' School. The Royal Commission will hear from 7 witnesses who will say that they were sexually abused at St Patrick's College in Ballarat. Most of these latter allegations refer to abuse by brother Edward Dowland, who was sentenced in March this year in relation to 34 charges of indecent assault and gross indecency for abusing young boys between 1971 and 1985. Former students of St Patrick's College and St Alypius Boys' School are expected to give evidence that there was an awareness of risk of sexual abuse among students and some staff members about brothers Best, Fitzgerald and Dowland, as well as Father Ridsdale. A witness given the pseudonym BAC is expected to give evidence that when he first commenced school at St Alypius, he was told by other boys to avoid Brother Best and to never let him get you alone. He was also told to be careful around Brother Fitzgerald. He understood this to mean that they would hurt children. Paul Akettle is expected to give evidence that other children warned him not to get out of the car with Father Ridsdale when they went on trips together. He is also expected to give evidence that he felt his teacher in grade 5 at St Alypius Boys' School was warning him when he talked to a group of boys about sticking together and being aware of how queens behaved. Timothy Green is expected to give evidence that children at St Patrick's used to snigger about Brother Dowland's behaviour and say things like, "He's touching the kids again." He is expected to say that it was common knowledge among the students in his year that Brother Dowland was abusing many of the boys at the school, but that this was not discussed. Timothy Green is also expected to say that he finds it inconceivable that none of the brothers, lay teachers, nurses, or even some of the parents knew about the abuse by Brother Dowland. He is expected to say, and I quote, "It was just so blatantly obvious and every boy in the class knew that their turn was going to come at some stage." The Royal Commission will hear evidence from a survivor who is expected to say he was sexually abused at St Joseph's Home, an orphanage in Ballarat run by the Sisters of Nazareth. Gordon Hill is expected to give evidence that he tried to explain to a doctor and a police officer that he had been sexually abused at the home after he ended up in hospital. He was told that nobody does that sort of thing. From that day on, he trusted no one. The Royal Commission will hear evidence from several survivors who are expected to say that they have contemplated suicide or struggled with suicidal thoughts as a result of the sexual abuse they suffered as children. In addition, it is expected that several witnesses will tell the Royal Commission that they know of others who they believe suffered sexual abuse as children and who they believe later went on to die prematurely or commit suicide. Helen Watson will give evidence about her son Peter's experience. She is expected to say that he was abused by a Catholic priest at the Ararat Presbytery. He did not disclose to his mother for some time. After a period of being in and out of jobs and psychiatric hospitals, he eventually took his own life 3 years after telling his mother. The Royal Commission will also hear evidence that one survivor has a photograph of the 1974 Grade 4 class at St Alypius Boys' School. Of the 33 boys shown in the photograph, the survivor is expected to tell the Royal Commission that 12 are dead, and he believes suicide to be the cause of their deaths. Many witnesses are expected to say that they were reluctant to disclose their abuse to anyone. They're expected to give reasons such as feelings of shame, guilt, disgust, fear of punishment, fear of judgment, and a belief that they just wouldn't be believed. The witness given the pseudonym B.A.B. is expected to say that he did not disclose his abuse at the time it occurred because his parents were such an integral part of the Catholic community, and he did not want to shake their faith or devastate them. He did not want them to know that they had put him in a position where sexual abuse could happen, even though he knew they had no role in that. Andrew Collins is expected to say, and I quote, "Ballarat is a very Catholic town, and the Catholic community is very closed. The Catholic culture is very strong. Coming forward and talking publicly about child sexual abuse in Catholic institutions not only has repercussions at the family level, but also at the business and social level in Ballarat. It is these impacts that stop other victims from coming forward." The Royal Commission will hear evidence from Bishop Paul Bird, the current Bishop of Ballarat, about what he has done to address the impact of child sexual abuse in the diocese. The provincial leader of the Christian Brothers Oceania Province, Peter Clinch, will give evidence about the Christian Brothers in Victoria, the involvement of the order in schools in Ballarat, and its response to criminal convictions of brothers for child sexual abuse. The current parish priest of St Lippius, Father McInerney, will give evidence about his views on the impact of the community of sexual abuse of children and clergy. The Royal Commission compelled the production of a range of documents for the purpose of this case study. Catholic Church Insurances Limited provided insurance for the Diocese of Ballarat at the relevant time. When claims were made to the diocese about the conduct of Ridsdale, Catholic Church Insurances arranged for investigators to conduct interviews with people within the diocese and elsewhere who were likely to have information relevant to the claims made. Transcripts of interviews held for this purpose were produced and form part of the tender bundle. Those transcripts detail interviews with, among others, Ridsdale, Bishop Ronald Mulcairns, Father Brian Finnegan, the former Vicar-General of the Diocese of Ballarat, Father Eugene McKinnon, the former parish priest of Edenhope, and Monsignor Henry Nolan, the former parish priest of Warrnambool. Notes of an interview with the Archbishop of Sydney will also be part of the documents tendered. Turning then to Ridsdale. On 27 May 1993, he pleaded guilty in the Magistrates Court of Victoria at Melbourne to 27 offences against children involving 8 victims. He was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months imprisonment, suspended after 3 months. He was released from custody on 26 August 1993. On 6 August 1994, Ridsdale pleaded guilty in the County Court of Victoria to a further 46 offences committed against children. These offences were committed over 20 years, between 1961 and 1981, and involved 21 victims aged between 9 and 15. He was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 15 years. On 11 August 2006, Ridsdale pleaded guilty in the County Court of Victoria to a further 35 offences against children aged between 6 and 7 and 15. 3 female victims were included. The offences occurred over 19 years, between 1961 and 1980, he was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 5 years. He will be eligible for parole on 8 April 2019. He will be nearly 85 years old. The evidence about his history of offending is expected to be as follows. He began offending against children, mainly boys, between 1954 and 1958, when in part he was in the seminary at Corpus Christi. He abused children at parishes or church locations throughout Victoria. They include Horsham, Inglewood, Camperdown, Ballarat North Parish, which includes Nazareth House and St Joseph's Home, Mildura, Swan Hill, Warrnambool, Ballarat East, which includes St Olympius Boys' School, Apollo Bay, Inglewood again, Edenhope, the National Pastoral Institute in Melbourne, Mortlake and Horsham. In addition, he offended against an altar boy from a parish in Sydney. Why and by whom he was moved from parish to parish will begin to be explored in the evidence in this first hearing in Ballarat. In the early 1960s, Ridsdale was at North Ballarat as an assistant priest. He molested a boy from Villa Maria, a boarding school for boys in East Ballarat. It was his first year as a priest. A complaint by the boy's parents was made to the then bishop, Bishop O'Collins. It was the first complaint Ridsdale knew of. Ridsdale told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that Bishop O'Collins told him there had been a complaint and said, I quote, "If this thing happens again, then you're off to the missions." Bishop O'Collins sent him to Mildura. There's expected to be evidence that Bishop O'Collins referred Ridsdale to a psychiatrist. The next time Ridsdale spoke to a bishop about his offending was to Bishop Mulcairns in 1975. The evidence is expected to reveal that that came about in the following way. Ridsdale was appointed parish priest of Apollo Bay Parish in 1974. He sexually abused boys in that parish. Ridsdale told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that he left Apollo Bay in February 1975 because he was confronted by a man who accused him of interfering with children. Ridsdale put in for a transfer. The consulta's minutes record the decision to move him to Inglewood in 1975. The consultors present at that meeting were Bishop Mulcairns, Father Madden, who was the Vicar General, Monsignors Fiscalini, O'Brien, McMahon, O'Keefe, Mackenzie and McInerney, as well as Fathers Callaghan, Melican and Arundel. Ridsdale was in Inglewood from February 1975 until late 75 or early 76. He was later convicted of offending against 9 children while parish priest at Inglewood. The Royal Commission has had contact from another 2 people reporting sexual abuse by Ridsdale during his time at Inglewood. The evidence is expected to be that Ridsdale told Bishop Mulcairns in 1975 to expect a complaint by a parent that Ridsdale had interfered with his son. That parent was a police officer. A complaint was made to Bishop Mulcairns, whose response was to send Ridsdale for counselling by a Franciscan priest, Father Peter Evans. Bishop Mulcairns kept no notes of that referral. Then Father, now Mr Evans, was contacted by Victoria Police in 1995. The police record him as having told them that he did not see Ridsdale in a professional sense for counselling. I will say more about the treatment Ridsdale received later. Catholic Church Insurances did not indemnify the Diocese of Ballarat for any claims arising from events after 31 December 1975 in relation to Ridsdale, presumably because of the knowledge Bishop Mulcairns had at that time. In January 1976, the consultors' meeting minutes record Ridsdale as being appointed temporarily to Bungaree until the end of February. Most of the consultants present were at the 1975 meeting when Ridsdale ultimately was moved to Inglewood. The same minutes, that is, the minutes of January 1976, record that Bishop Mulcairns discussed the need for confidentiality and that, quote, some matters had arisen in the diocese which might make it advisable to delay making any appointments. At this stage, moves should be kept to a minimum. In March 1976, Ridsdale was appointed to Edenhope as an administrator, and then in January 1977 as the parish priest. Each appointment was discussed with the consultors. Bishop Mulcairns has said that the appointment to Edenhope was based on advice from Father Evans. However, he did not keep any record of that communication. No record has been produced indicating any condition or limitation or restriction was placed on Ridsdale when he was appointed to Bungaree or Edenhope. Ridsdale was convicted of offending against 13 children while parish priest at Edenhope. The Royal Commission has had contact with an additional 11 people reporting sexual abuse by Ridsdale during his time there. Monsignor Henry Nolan was a priest at Edenhope less than 2 years after Ridsdale. He told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that no one told him about Ridsdale's activities. Father McKinnon became parish priest of Edenhope in July 1991. He told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that he knew, as a priest coming into the area, about Ridsdale abusing children. He told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that, quote, that was just what we talked about as priests and so on. Ridsdale took a year off in 1980 to study at the National Pastoral Institute in Melbourne. He offended there. In January 1981, Ridsdale was appointed parish priest of Mortlake. The consultors present at the meeting where this was decided were Bishop Mulcairns, Monsignor Fiscalini, and Fathers Mackenzie, Downs, Arundel, Madden and Melican. Father George Pell was an apology. Ridsdale was a prolific offender during this appointment. There will be evidence that his behaviour around boys was no secret in Mortlake. Father Brian Finnegan was the bishop's secretary in 1981 and 1982. He told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that he had received complaints about Ridsdale being over-friendly with boys at Mortlake, and he confronted Ridsdale about those complaints. He reported that Ridsdale was most crestfallen. There were at least 2 reports to Bishop Mulcairns from different sources about Ridsdale's offending in Mortlake. Monsignor Fiscalini, the Vicar General of the Diocese in Ballarat until July 1982, was one. In his capacity as Vicar General, he was approached by a parent distressed about their child being sexually molested by Ridsdale. Monsignor Fiscalini told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that he reported that to Bishop Mulcairns and that Ridsdale was removed from that parish. Now, secondly, the principal of the school, a nun, told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that she was told by one of the parents that Ridsdale was abusing, quote, half the boys in the school. She spoke with Sister Vagg, the superior at the convent. Sister Vagg then rang the bishop, who told her to tell Ridsdale about the complaint so that he would stop. She did that, and she said that Ridsdale said he did not know why it had come up at that stage. The evidence is likely to reveal that Monsignor Nolan was told by Bishop Mulcairns, after Bishop Mulcairns had spoken to the nuns, to go to Mortlake. Monsignor Nolan recalled to the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that while he was at Mortlake, a boy might have been staying in the presbytery. Monsignor Nolan said that when he raised it with Ridsdale, Ridsdale said, "What's the problem?" A transcript of an interview Bishop Mulcairns had with the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator in 1993 record him as saying that there were complaints of inappropriate behaviour with young children, boys, from Mortlake. So he was, in his words, taken out of there. He told the investigator, as was recorded, "I know there were specific complaints that he was engaging in inappropriate behaviour with young children, and I think boys. As I said, there were no specific complaints made, but there was an approach to Monsignor Fiscalini, who was Vicar General at the time, by people from Mortlake, complaining about his behaviour. And there was also a doctor in Mortlake who contacted me about it, and that people were concerned about what was going on." In a further interview in 1994, Bishop Mulcairns said that two parents from Mortlake came to see him on 11 and 12 August 1982. On 15 August, he went to Mortlake for a confirmation. On that visit, he became aware that a boy was living in the presbytery. He did not think it appropriate, but he did not confront Ridsdale about it. He said there was no suggestion that there had been any interference whatsoever with that boy in the house. Ridsdale was moved from Mortlake. The principal told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that she was forbidden by the bishop to speak to the rest of the staff about what had happened. She said she told the bishop something should be done for the children, and he said there would be nothing done because that would admit guilt. Ridsdale was referred by Bishop Mulcairns for counselling from Father Augustine Watson, described by Bishop Mulcairns as a Franciscan priest, psychologist. No notes of this referral have been produced to the Royal Commission. Bishop Mulcairns told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that he did not take it as his position to report Ridsdale to the police. Ridsdale was discussed at the consultors' meeting on 14 September 1982. Present at that meeting were Bishop Mulcairns, Monsignor Fiscalini, and Fathers Henry Nolan, George Pell, David Arundel, J. Martin and E. Bryant. The minutes of that meeting note the following under the heading Staffing. The bishop advised that it had become necessary for Father Gerald Ridsdale to move from the parish of Mortlake. Negotiations are underway to have him work with the Catholic Inquiry Centre in Sydney. A new appointment to Mortlake will be necessary to take effect after October 17. The minutes do not disclose what the bishop said about why it had become necessary. However, it is expected that there will be evidence, as indicated earlier, that Bishop Mulcairns knew it was because Ridsdale had abused boys in Mortlake. Several of the consultors present at that meeting had been present at meetings of or were members of college on each occasion in the past when Ridsdale had been moved. After Ridsdale was moved from Mortlake, the consultors agreed that as no one had applied for the position of parish priest there, Father Dennis Dennehy be appointed as Mortlake parish priest from October 1982. Father McKinnon told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that Father Dennehy had told him the following. On his first night there, Father Dennehy was stood up against the wall by 4 parents who told him if he interfered with any of the kids, he'd be gutted. Father Dennehy was told that Ridsdale had attempted to molest nearly every boy in the school. Father Dennehy organised counselling from a non-Catholic source for parents. Father Dennehy told the Catholic Church's Insurances investigator that he thought every male child between the ages of 10 years and 16 years who was at the school was molested by Ridsdale. In November 1982, Ridsdale was moved to the Catholic Inquiry Centre in Sydney. A priest was needed to answer the written inquiries of a correspondence course which the centre offered. Bishop Mulcairns offered the services of Ridsdale to the centre. Father Fitzpatrick was the director of the centre, and Father Fitzpatrick and Ridsdale lived in the centre with a housekeeper. Father Fitzpatrick told the Catholic Church Insurances lawyer that Bishop Mulcairns had told him the transfer was as a result of sexual matters. He also said that Bishop Mulcairns told him that before Ridsdale came to Sydney, Ridsdale had had trouble with little boys and he wanted him out of the situation in the Diocese of Ballarat. In his 1994 interview with the Catholic Church Insurances investigator, Bishop Mulcairns said that Father Fitzpatrick was advised of the problem, but I just can't remember who else was advised. The secretary of the centre at the time told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that Father Fitzpatrick had been told that there was some sort of problem with Ridsdale and a young boy in Ballarat, which is why they preferred to have him out of their diocese. On 19 November 1982, Bishop Carroll offered Ridsdale and granted Ridsdale faculties of the Archdiocese of Sydney for the duration of his stay. The Archbishop of Sydney at the time was Cardinal Freeman. In early 1983, Archbishop Clancy became Archbishop of Sydney. A summary of what Cardinal Clancy told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator in 1993 records that Bishop Mulcairns had taken him, Archbishop Clancy, aside at the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference meeting in 1983 and explained that Ridsdale had certain sexual problems and was under professional treatment. Ridsdale had come to Sydney to get away from the problems in Victoria. Cardinal Clancy said he accepted Ridsdale on the same basis that Cardinal Freeman had. That is, he would work at the centre, he would not be in contact with children, and he would continue with his counselling. No notes were taken of the discussions between Bishop Mulcairns and the Cardinal. Cardinal Clancy is also recorded as having told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that letters involving transfers often did not include explicit details of the reasons the transfer was taking place. There is expected to be evidence that the Secretary of the Centre told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that Father Fitzpatrick used to go away for weekends and that many children visited Ridsdale at the centre while he was away. Occasionally, she said, children stayed overnight. They were mainly young boys, and Ridsdale regularly used to take an unaccompanied boy and girl to Whitecliffs in New South Wales, usually for school holidays. Whitecliffs was where Ridsdale had a holiday house. Father Fitzpatrick told the Catholic Church Insurance's lawyer that his job was not to supervise Ridsdale out of hours. The centre was across the road from a primary school. Within 12 months, the secretary said that Ridsdale had established a firm friendship with the Maroubra Beach parish. He also had a prayer group. He offended against a boy who was part of that group. Marika Gubatsky was the president of the Yarra Bay Eucharistic Prayer Community. In 1993, she signed a statement that in early 1983, Ridsdale was celebrating Mass at Yarra Bay, and the witness with the pseudonym BAO became his altar boy. This was at a time when one of the conditions on which he was in Sydney was no contact with children. There is expected to be no evidence that he was supervised or limited in any way as to the work he carried out while at the centre in Sydney. Ridsdale told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that while he was in Sydney, he relieved at the Bulli parish in the Diocese of Wollongong for 3 consecutive weekends. BAO came and stayed with him on at least 2 of those weekends, and Ridsdale offended against him. Father Fitzpatrick told the Catholic Church Insurance's lawyer that Ridsdale did some parish supply work at his instigation on 1 or 2 occasions, and that any other parish supply work was of a private nature and not known to him. In June 1983, Father Fitzpatrick asked Bishop Mulcairns to allow Ridsdale to stay for a further year. This request was approved at the consultors' meeting on 8 August 1983, which included Bishop Mulcairns, Monsignor Fiscalini, Vicar General Father Henry Nolan, Fathers Pell, Arundel and Martin. These members had been present at the meeting where Bishop Mulcairns advised that Ridsdale had to leave Mortlake. Father Fitzpatrick is recorded as having told the Catholic Church Insurance's lawyer that by mid-1984 he had heard a number of things about Ridsdale which made him suspicious. He told Bishop Mulcairns about those things, although at the time of the interview in 1993 he could not remember what they were. He remembers saying words to the effect that, and I quote, "Something should be done about this. I can't be his therapist." Father Fitzpatrick said that Bishop Mulcairns responded in a letter dated 3 September 1984. In that letter, Bishop Mulcairns wrote, "I might add that I had a good discussion with him about the problem, which arose early in the year and of which we spoke prior to your departure overseas. He was quite open about the situation and said that he had discussed it with the Melbourne priest who was advising him and certainly hopes that it is not something which will crop up again." In 1985, Bishop Mulcairns wrote to Father Fitzpatrick and said that he had contacted Father Augustine Watson, that is the counsellor he had sent Ridsdale to earlier, about the possibility of Ridsdale helping out in 1 or more of the parishes close to the centre. He said he had also spoken with Bishop Heaps and Archbishop Clancy, and they approved his plan. The Archdiocese of Sydney consultors meeting on 4 December 1985 have the minutes recording that mention was also made of Reverend G. Ridsdale's availability during 1986 to work in the diocese. He could possibly help at Narraweena until a new pastor is appointed. By December 1985, Father Fitzpatrick said that he had been told that a boy stayed the night at a centre. He said he contacted Bishop Mulcairns and said, "I want him out of here." Ridsdale left the centre by the end of the year. Notwithstanding these complaints, Ridsdale was appointed to Woy Woy Parish as an assistant priest in January 1986 and as the administrator of Forestville in 1986 April for 6 weeks. Both of these parishes were in the Archdiocese of Sydney. Bishop Mulcairn said he thought it would not be a problem for Ridsdale to go to a parish because he had been in counselling for 2 years. Ridsdale then returned to Victoria. He was appointed assistant priest in Horsham from July 1986. He was appointed to Horsham on the advice of Father Augustine Watson, the evidence is likely to reveal, because Ridsdale was friends with Frank Madden, who was the parish priest of Horsham. In a 1993 interview with the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator, Father Madden said that when Ridsdale was appointed to Horsham in July 1986, he knew that he had been in some sort of trouble, but he said, "I was not told what had occurred and I really did not want to know." Father Madden also said, "I did not know his prior history, and what I did know was that he had had some trouble and he had had counselling, I believe, and he was supposedly quite fit for parish work." He said he became aware of Ridsdale's propensity towards young boys when Ridsdale was transferred from Horsham Parish in 1989. Bishop Mulcairns explained the decision to appoint Ridsdale to the Horsham Parish. He told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that Father Watson advised that it would be, quote, "a responsible thing to put him back into parish work." Again, no notes were taken of this discussion. Bishop Mulcairns also said that we did not know anything that had happened in Sydney. That statement is not consistent with the expected evidence which is set out above. The appointment of Horsham was discussed with the consultors, most of whom were present at the 1982 meeting when Bishop Mulcairns revealed that it had become necessary to move Ridsdale from Mortlake. A written complaint was received by Bishop Mulcairns in August 1987 about Ridsdale's offending against BAE while at Horsham. The abuse occurred at Whitecliffs. The child was known to Ridsdale from Horsham Parish. Ridsdale was not moved from the parish for another 6 months, and only after Bishop Mulcairns received a letter from BAE's solicitor. It was not until April 1988 that Ridsdale stepped down from parish work. Bishop Mulcairns advised his Vicar General and the consultors in similar terms to his description of why Ridsdale had to move from Mortlake. That is, it became necessary to remove him from parish ministry. Ridsdale's faculties were suspended in June 1988 for 12 months. 13 years had passed since Bishop Mulcairns first knew that Ridsdale was sexually abusing boys he met during his work as a priest. Ridsdale had been at some 9 parishes and other church locations during this time and abused more than 50 children. Ridsdale will not be asked about the details of his offending conduct when he gives evidence, nor will the names of those he offended against be revealed. The questioning will concern his formation and what shaped him early in his religious life, who he told about his offending, who spoke to him about complaints, and what was done as a result. In 1995, Victoria Police investigated allegations that Bishop Mulcairns may have committed offences in relation to concealing a felony or a serious indictable offence. Although the police found that there was evidence that Bishop Mulcairns was aware that criminal offences were committed by Ridsdale, they found there was no evidence to support charging him with a concealing offence. As I've indicated, there will be evidence in relation to the treatment that Ridsdale underwent. Particularly between 1975 and 1990, but also in 1961, Ridsdale is reported as having received treatment from a number of practitioners or institutions. Who sent him and why, and with what effect, will begin to be addressed in this first Ballarat hearing. Ridsdale told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that he was not sent to a doctor by Bishop O'Collins in the early 1960s, following a complaint made during his first year as a priest. However, there is expected to be evidence that Bishop Mulcairns removed from Ridsdale's file and destroyed a letter sent by a psychiatrist, Dr. Seal, to Bishop O'Collins. Bishop Mulcairns is recorded as having destroyed this letter before Ridsdale was charged and before Bishop Mulcairns himself was interviewed by the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator. In a memorandum he signed, Bishop Mulcairns said he destroyed the letter because he thought the letter was privileged and because he had in mind the effect on other priests of the diocese if the documents were made public. Bishop Mulcairns said that the letter made no reference to the reason Ridsdale had been referred to Dr. Seal by Bishop O'Collins. He recalled that the letter said that Dr. Seal had seen Ridsdale and was confident that, with appropriate care, he could function as a priest in the future. The letter was dated in the early to mid-60s. Bishop Mulcairns has said that he sent Ridsdale for counselling shortly after Ridsdale admitted to offending against a boy at Inglewood in 1975. The evidence is likely to reveal that Ridsdale was initially sent to Father Peter Evans for 1 week of treatment, which Ridsdale described as simply relaxation technique stuff. There is expected to be evidence that Peter Evans told Victoria Police in 1995 that he did not treat Ridsdale in a professional capacity. Mr. Evans thought it likely that Ridsdale attended a retreat, which Mr. Evans described as a drop-in centre. In his 1995 interview with the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator, Bishop Mulcairns reported that Ridsdale was first sent to Father Evans and then to Father Watson for counselling. He said, "I only appointed him after I was given assurance that he was ready to be appointed again. However, I am not sure who gave the assurance. Specifically, he said he was not sure whether it was Father Evans or Ridsdale himself who had told him that Father Evans had said that Ridsdale could be appointed again." That advice was not given in writing, and Bishop Mulcairns did not make a record of the conversation. Ridsdale was then appointed to Edenhope In his 1993 interview with the Catholic Church Insurances investigator, Bishop Mulcairns said that to his knowledge, Ridsdale was having counselling while he was at Edenhope. The evidence is expected to be that Ridsdale only commenced counselling again after he left Mortlake. Following his departure from Mortlake Parish, Ridsdale received counselling from Father Watson on and off until he travelled to the United States in late 89. In a 1989 letter to Bishop Mulcairns, Father Watson described the methodology he used with Ridsdale as being based on the work of Viktor Frankl and drawing together emotional, rational and spiritual dimensions. He said, and I quote, "I do not believe that this, or any other serious problem, can be resolved purely by psychology. At the best, psychology is only a useful tool, and I am sure that Frankl's logotherapy is the best available, mainly because he insists that man is essentially a spiritual being and that the most prevalent psychological illness in the modern world is a spiritual neurosis. Therefore, the ultimate solution is in our faith, if thoroughly understood and practiced." Bishop Mulcairns told the Catholic Church Insurances investigator that on at least 2 occasions he consulted with Father Watson, Ridsdale's placements, including Ridsdale helping out in 1 or more parishes while in Sydney. No records have been produced of any discussion between Bishop Mulcairns and Father Watson about these matters, only the letter I referred to earlier. In 1989, Father Watson wrote to Bishop Mulcairns indicating that he insisted that Ridsdale should see a spiritual director regularly, and in his view this worked well while he was in Sydney and had a director available, although he said at one stage, "I didn't see him for something like 12 months. From November 89 till September 90, Ridsdale attended a residential program at a centre run by the servants of the Paraclete in New Mexico. The director of the centre informed Bishop Mulcairns the program was both psychological and spiritual. The psychological component was reported as involving both individual and group therapies, while the spiritual component was reported as involving spiritual direction and both common and personal prayer. At the end of his time in New Mexico, staff of the centre, including a spiritual director, art therapist and psychodramatist, made positive comments about Ridsdale's progress. Regular reports on Ridsdale were sent to the bishop from the director of the centre. However, the director requested that these reports be either returned or destroyed. None of these reports have been produced to the Royal Commission. The evidence is likely to be that an Australian psychiatrist, Professor Richard Ball, commented in 1993 that none of the treatment at this centre was behavioural, that there was limited specific attention to sexual matters, and that much exploration and monitoring was by self-report. Professor Ball also reported that the centre had either been closed or markedly reduced in activity and was itself under litigation in relation to the abnormal sexual behaviour of someone who was at the centre at the same time as Ridsdale. All of the treatment that Ridsdale was referred to and received was within the confines of the Catholic Church. In 1993, Professor Ball observed that this was a common approach of the Church at the time. The evidence is expected to be that notwithstanding that Ridsdale received counselling from Father Evans and Father Watson, he continued to offend. This observation was made by Professor Ball who specifically noted that the help Ridsdale received from Father Watson decreased but in no way eliminated his behaviour. Despite the fact that Ridsdale continued to offend while receiving counselling, no alternative treatment was sought outside the confines of the Catholic Church. Now, there are a number of matters relevant to this case study which involve Father Brian Lucas. By October 1989, Father Lucas was a member of the Special Issues Committee of the Australian Catholic Bishops' Conference and a member of the National Committee for Professional Standards. His role was to act as a source of advice and assistance to leaders within the Catholic Church in respect of providing guidance on and dealing with concerns about and complaints of child sexual abuse. The role and operation of these committees are relevant to the Royal Commission's examination of the Church authorities' response to, among other matters, the offending by Ridsdale. There are a number of matters in which Father Lucas is referred to in the material which will ultimately be tendered. First, the evidence is expected to be that Father Lucas had discussions with the family of BAE after their complaint to Bishop Mulcairns in 1987, and that he met with Bishop Mulcairns about their complaint. Second, Cardinal Clancy is reported as having told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that he discussed a complaint from the BAL family with Father Lucas. He said that by that time the Church had prepared a protocol for handling such matters, and part of that protocol was for Father Lucas and Father Usher to visit the family. According to a record of a 1994 meeting between Bishop Mulcairns and the Church and the Catholic Church Insurance's legal advisors, Bishop Mulcairns said of this complaint that it had been made to the Cardinal and brought to his attention, and he spoke to Brian Lucas about it, and they thought it was going all right. Thirdly, in 1988, Ms. Gabaski, who I've referred to previously, was told that BAO had disclosed that he had been abused by Ridsdale. She told the group's spiritual director. In a statement, she said she was told that Father Lucas and Father Usher visited the family the next evening. In this statement, she also records that in early 1993, having read that Ridsdale had been charged with sexual offences on boys in Victoria, she spoke to the Dean of St Mary's Cathedral about Ridsdale's conduct in Sydney. She states that she asked the Dean, Father Redden, whether there would be other media reports about Ridsdale. In her statement, she says Father Redden replied, "I give you my word that it will never come to the Hinch program or anything like that." She then contacted Father Lucas, who she quotes as saying, "You don't have to worry about the media. Jerry's case will never come to Sydney. I am in touch with BAO's family and we will take care of BAO." Fourthly, Father Glyn Murphy, the diocesan secretary to Bishop Mulcairns, told the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator that around 1993 he had spoken to Father Lucas, who told him that he and Father Usher were dealing with mothers of children in a prayer group who said they were interfered with by Ridsdale when he was working at the centre. Fifthly, and also in 1993, Father Lucas engaged solicitors on behalf of Bishop Mulcairns about employment issues and signed the letter of engagement as client on behalf of Bishop Mulcairns. Finally, in October 1993, the Catholic Church Insurance's investigator recommended further interviews with parish priests in the Archdiocese of Sydney about their knowledge of Ridsdale. He suggested that Father Lucas should initially contact them in order to put them at their ease and gain their full cooperation. The work of these committees will be the subject of further work by the Royal Commission. Now, finally, I turn to Paul David Ryan. As I indicated earlier, his transcript of his private hearing will be tendered. Paul Ryan was a Catholic cleric ordained in the Diocese of Ballarat. He has given the following evidence. He joined the St Francis Xavier Seminary in Adelaide when he was about 19 or 20 in his second year after completing high school. He remained there for 2 years until he was asked to leave. He was never given a reason other than he might have been unsuitable. He said in hindsight he may have been asked to leave because they knew he was gay. A few years later he entered the Corpus Christi Seminary in Werribee in Victoria. While a seminarian there, Ryan engaged in sexual activity with other seminarians. He did not know whether those running the seminary were aware of his activities. Ryan said he thought he was doing the wrong thing and that he reconciled his activities by going to confession with his regular confessor and mentor, Father Ronald Pickering. Ryan felt the need to confess because he believed the sexual act itself was a sin. After going to confession, Ryan felt that his relationship with God was re-established. Ryan gave evidence that when he was at Corpus Christi, the challenges and issues of dealing with celibacy were not formally addressed. He said that the implication was that celibacy was learnt by abstinence. Celibacy was put in a positive light, along the lines of, you give this up so you can serve. He worked as a deacon for 3 months at St Columba's Parish in Ballarat North before his ordination. While there, he was involved with a boy or young man from the choir. He said he thought that the boy or young man was over 18 years old, but accepted he could well have been younger. He gave evidence that he probably went to confession about this. If he did confess to his parish priest, Ryan said that the priest was bound not to disclose what was confessed to him. In May 1976, he was ordained as a priest of the Diocese of Ballarat. After his ordination, he returned to Corpus Christi for some time and then lived with Father Pickering for about a year. During this time, he was referred by the rector of Corpus Christi to see Ronald Conway, a psychologist used by the Catholic Church. Ryan said he thought that the reason he went to see Mr. Conway was because of his sexual activity with other seminarians. After seeing Mr. Conway, Ryan was referred to Dr. Seal. Ryan said he saw Dr. Seal to correct his behaviours, that is, his sexual acting out in the seminary. Ryan understood that Dr. Seal recommended he spend a year's spiritual formation in a religious community overseas. Ryan believed that spiritual formation was religious language for dealing with the fact that he had engaged in sexual conduct, notwithstanding his vow of celibacy. Ryan travelled to Maryland in the United States in 1977, where he remembered seeing a Dr. Kinane, a psychologist at the Catholic University of America. He didn't recall any discussion with anyone about the age group he was interested in. He thought Dr. Kinane was trying to help him understand that he was homosexual. In 1978, Reverend Harvey, who worked at the Catholic University, wrote to Bishop Mulcairns and said that Dr. Kinane was of the opinion that Ryan should return home after he'd completed his therapy. Reverend Harvey said that Dr. Kinane recognised the difficulties that Ryan may have returning, but that he felt it was better that he make re-entry now. Ryan was in the United States at the Star of Sea Parish in the late 70s. He gave evidence that before the end of his time at that parish, he became aware of allegations that he was involved with adolescent boys. He was asked to leave by the parish priest. He said he thought that by about March 1980, he had told Bishop Mulcairns about acting out on his attraction to adolescent boys. He gave evidence that in about 1991, when he was at Penshurst Parish in Australia, a complaint was made against him offending against an adolescent boy. Ryan gave evidence that he accepted that the complaint was valid and said so when called to the bishop's office by, he thought, Father Brian Finnegan and confronted with it. He left Penshurst Parish. He said that he confessed to his confessor, and in this way he reconciled his relationship with God. From Penshurst, Ryan went to Ararat for a few months where he said he was not placed in any formal supervision. After Ararat, he went for further treatment and attended retreats overseas, all of which was funded by the diocese. He also stayed with Father Pickering for a time in London, where he found out that Father Pickering was trying to avoid facing issues of his own sex with adolescents, which were being raised with him by the Archbishop of Melbourne, Archbishop Little. In 1992, Bishop Mulcairns arranged for him to have counselling with Father Dan Torpey. He thought the purpose of the counselling was because of his sexual behaviour with adolescents. Ryan thought, as he said in evidence, that Bishop Mulcairns buried his head in the sand about sexual abuse issues in the diocese. Ryan said Bishop Mulcairns knew about him in 1977, but did not revoke his faculties until 1993. The diocese continued to financially support Ryan until about the end of 1996. He was then asked to consent to be laicized. He refused. In 2006, he pleaded guilty to 3 charges of indecent assault between 90 and 91 against one victim. He was sentenced in the Magistrates Court of Victoria at Warrnambool to 18 months imprisonment with a non-parole period of 12 months. As I indicated earlier, Your Honours and Commissioner, there are 18 witnesses who will give evidence of their own experience, or in one case that of a son, followed by the President of Moving Towards Justice and a senior clinician at Ballarat Child Sexual Assault Centre. Given the time, Your Honour, is it convenient to break for morning tea?
Yes, we'll take the short adjournment now.